Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back looking at some of the economy modifications, or the planned economy modifications and changes and BR changes which are coming to the game in July. Now there was an update on Thursday for these battle rating changes, so we're going to go over them now. There seems to be a decent amount which has been changed, mainly aircraft but also some ground vehicles. Haven't actually found anything in the fleet that has changed at the moment, but maybe in the future it might. Also, there has been a slight change to the additional info. As you can see, the R2Y2s will get airfield takeoff only, so they're not going to get an attacker spawn or anything like that. It'll be interesting to see what happens if they get on those Japanese maps where you only get carriers. My guess is that they're going to get just the normal fighter spawn, but also it will get the ability to take off without bombs, so you don't have to bring along that 800 kilo. Now for me personally, I think that 800 kilo is actually kind of useful. It takes out the majority of a base, at least at its current time. With the way that it has the bomber spawn, you can hit a base and then you go and attack other jet fighters. It seems to work pretty well, but with the airfield takeoff, my guess is it won't be as useful. Then, of course, the I-301, the red Menace, is getting moved to rank 2. And this completely makes sense, because it's been slowly but surely creeping up in BR over the last year or so, or since it actually came out, and now it is at 2.7, and I think, are they moving it up to 3.0 if I remember correctly? If we have a look at this list. Yeah, they're moving it up to 3.0, which would mean that it would be the highest BR vehicle when it comes to rank 1. So moving it up to 3.0, so it's the same BR as the I-180S, I think personally makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it's good that, you know, they're moving it up to keep it in line with everything else. So, let's go through the changes that have happened. Now, one thing that would be nice, which has actually happened in the past, is when changes are made to lists like this, they're kind of highlighted in a specific color so you know what has changed since the first iteration. The way I had to work out what had been changed here from the first iteration is open my video and basically, you know, try and match up what I saw, which isn't, it definitely isn't the easiest way of doing things and can lead to a lot of error. Whereas before what would happen is it would say, okay, new change since as of date blah blah blah, and this would be highlighted or this would be highlighted. So it would be nice to see that implemented instead. So here are the changes that have happened over this last week. The first one is the ME264. So the ME264 was going up to 4.0 in arcade, but it wasn't being touched in realistic. And I've talked about the ME264 before. A lot of people took that video where I was talking about its repair cost as defending the way that repair costs are used to balance machines, which of course was not the message of the video. The message of the video was this thing doesn't die, and the reason why it has such a high repair cost is because it doesn't die. The only way to really kill yourself in this thing is if you can't land it. If we're talking about other aircraft shooting you down, it doesn't really work too well because of its high spawn and also its high climb rate. The only way to balance this thing, you could put this up to like 5.3 BR and it would still be able to do what it does now. The way to fix this is to take away that long-range bomber spawn and just put it at the same spawn that stuff like the Lancaster gets and the B-17 gets, and it will be completely fine. And people will be able to climb up to it, will be able to do damage to it, and all of that good stuff. The problem with it now is because it gets that really high spawn, it can get up to 6,000 meters before it gets halfway across the map with a full bomb load. So changing this to 4.0 ain't gonna fix that fact, and all we're just gonna see is once again another bomber with a good rate of climb with the long-range bomber spawn, which is going to just keep going up in repair cost. Like, this thing is already 53,000, and as talked about before, if I have a look at my stats in it, let's just do this. Let's see if I can find it quickly, which probably won't be the easiest thing. It's the let's just go to deaths, because I know I haven't died that many times in it, so it might be easy to have a look. Let's see. ME264, here we go. So I've had 9 battles in it, I've died 4 times, and I've made 140,000 SL. So I'm already pretty much there for repairing this thing 3 times, and I still have 6 free repairs in it. Like, it's as simple as that with this plane. It makes money because it can't die. So that is the thing about it. It's not changing its BR ain't gonna make a difference. You got to take away that long range bomber spawn. Otherwise, nothing's gonna change on it. The Whirlwind P9 is going down to 3.7. This brings it in line with the Whirlwind Mark 1. I understand why they've done this, because the two vehicles are very similar to each other, but the P9 is just a flat-out better version of the Whirlwind, and it has been, for a very long time. If you have a look at the Whirlwind, they actually gave it bombs, the Mark 1, and it was actually the Whirlwind Mark 2 in real life which had bombs, but, the only real difference between the Mark 1 and the Mark 2 was the bomb racks, so you could probably just call this the Whirlwind if you felt like it. But the P9... the major difference between it and the Whirlwind Mark 1 is the fact that it gets a lot more ammunition, which makes it like doubly as combat effective. Because the Whirlwind Mark 1, the biggest issue with it is its dive speed, is the fact that its climb is okay, but once it gets to the battle in aerialistic, its guns, you only really have enough ammo to kill like one person, whereas the P9 has double the amount of ammo, and a little bit more as well, so you're able to kill a few people with these god-awful guns. So, seeing them as the same BR, I personally can understand why they are seen as the same BR, but this one is just more effective than the other. And since it's a gift vehicle, I wish the two were swapped at some point, because I don't like, gift vehicles being better than their tech tree counterparts. But bringing it down, I can see it. I understand why they're doing it. The Key 61s. So the Key 61 1 high is going down to 4.7, and the Key 61-2 is also going down to 4.7. So this is an interesting one, and the reason why is the Key 61s I have a very much an interesting relationship with. So the ones that we're talking about is, let's see, the Key 61-2 that you see here, and also, where is the other one? Because you've got the Key 61-2 and the Key 61I high. So this one is one of the heavier Key 61s. And if you have a look at machines such as the Key 61s here, the Ko, the Otsu, and the Key 100, these are really fun to fly because they're quite maneuverable. They're a good mixture of being able to climb but also turn, good dive behind them, and they have guns which are lacking a little bit but easily enough to do the job because of the amount of ammo that they have. The problem is when you get to this Key 61 high, it is heavy. You can see just by the rate of climb there, it gets better guns in the form of the MG151s, but also it just becomes a lot heavier, a lot more cumbersome, and it's a lot harder to use compared to the other Key 61s. You lose so much maneuverability and gain a little bit of firepower that you become much more of just like a bomber hunter than anything else. So I'm really not surprised that this thing is actually going down in BR to 4.7 because of that fact. It doesn't feel nice to fly compared to a lot of the Japanese planes, and you've got to remember, around this BR, you have a lot of really fun zeros. The A6M5s, the A7M2s are about, so trying to justify using the Key 61 high over these is very hard to do, especially since the tie is 4.3, and the only real difference between this one and this one is the guns that are on board, and the tie seems to still, do a little bit better than the high. But is it 2 BR brackets different because it has 151s over HO5s? Maybe. It also has a little bit less ammunition as well. So if you agree with that, fair enough. But for me, the experience I had in the high was a lot worse compared to the other Key 61s just because of that lack of maneuverability. The Key 61-2, I'm not sure I agree with its BR going down as much. I had a much more positive experience in this one compared to some of the others, just because of maybe it was out a little bit later, maybe I was a slightly better pilot. You can see here that I played 17 battles, won 17 battles with a KD of just about 2.5 to 1. The Key 61 high, you can see it's 21 and 10. Once again, 76% win rate. So, you know, I've done pretty well in these things. The tie, 20 to 15, and then I'm sure all of the other ones are a little bit lower, like the Otsu here, 29 and 7. But yeah, you can see when the Key 61-2 came out, I pretty much just blasted it for 17 wins because it is a really good fighter. It's got good energy behind it, and the Kawasaki HA140, the guns, the HO5s. A lot of people don't like. I've kind of just got used to them over time. Maybe that's an issue. The ammunition count is definitely a lot lower than a lot of other machines, but if you're playing zeros, you're kind of used to that. But I can understand it going down once again, because if we're talking about just ease of access or ease of use, it is definitely not as easy as these A6M5s, and it's definitely not as easy as something like an A7M2. So because of that, if they're going down for that reason, I get it, Also, at 4.7, your only other option if you don't have the premium A6M5 Co is this, and the max repair cost is 36,000. And even though I showed, you can make a lot of money with the A6M5 Otsu, you just don't die. The thing is, I understand that for a lot of people, you're gonna die every once in a while and lose a lot of silver lions. So seeing these go down, I agree with the high, or the high hien, as it's known. I don't agree with the 2. I think the 2 should just stay at 5.0. It feels very nice to fly, whereas the high does feel heavy when you throw it around the sky. The next one is the Ju-288C. So the Ju-288C is a premium bomber. It's the German premium bomber. It burst onto the scene earlier this year. And to be honest, it is a really good aircraft of 5.3. The thing, or the change that it got over the last few months is that they took away its maximum speed where it could dive at a crazy amount. So what you could do is at the start of a battle, you were able to dive to around about 800, maybe 850 even, maybe about 800 though, from your bomber spawn. Get really low, drop your bombs off, kill 2 bases, get back to base before anything could touch you. So therefore, this became an incredibly good grinder for a lot of people. Like, I believe my Ju-288, if I have a look at like the Silver Lions, yeah, I played 48 battles in it. I basically just turned off my brain, and 58% win rates, 17 kills to 33 deaths, so that's pretty good in a bomber. And you can see 1.5 million SL when it comes to it, 55 ground targets. But the main thing I was doing was just bombing bases in it, or hitting medium tanks depending on the map. And it was very easy to do. I got a lot of research, and I was just using it to, when my brain didn't want to, like, think about how to, work in a fighter capacity or work really hard on the ground, because for me, like, ground vehicles are a lot harder to use than air vehicles. So instead of that, just, whap this thing out, hit 2 bases, get back to the airfield, and then if somebody's attacking you, try and hit them with the 20. So it's a very easy plane to use. Is it as good as the HE-177? This is the question, because the 177 sits right now at 5.3. And the Ju-288, if we have a look at it, is going up to 5.7. So, is the 288 better than the HU-177A5? My answer is no. And the reason for this is because the 177 still has a great dive on it, has a better bomb load overall than the 288. It can kill 3 bases, not just with the... I'm not sure if it can do it with the Fritz X's, but it can do it with the two 1800s and the 6500s, even though it's quite a waste of the 1800s. It can do it, and then on top of this, it's got better defensive armament, it has a lot more power behind it, and yes, you are a bigger target, so that is the trade-off, but because you have that crazy long-range bomber spawn, which we talked about, which is the issue on the ME-264, it's still an insanely good machine. So, even though it has the repair cost of 41,000, once again, the reason it has that is because it doesn't die a lot. So seeing this go above this is a bit of a surprise, especially when you look at the US, which is another one of these nations, which is, you know, it suffers from the, let's just call it power creep in the game, where a lot of these machines were added pre-power, pre the HE-177, and they've kind of been blasted out the water. The PB-4Y2, a bomber that I have a lot of disdain for. I think it's awful. And then you've got the B-17EL, which is just a worse version of the 177 in every way. It has worse bomb loads. Technically, it has worse turrets, even though it has more coverage. It definitely gets annihilated more because of the MG151 side around. It's slower. It's less maneuverable. All of this. And then the French, well, they get a privateer as well, so good luck for them. The British get a Lancaster, which has technically maybe a slightly better bomb load, but it's still worse because of its configuration. Definitely worse defenses and speed and maneuverability. So and that's at 5.7, not even at 5.3. The Soviets, I mean, the Soviets have a Tu-2S, so you know it's a completely different role in the game. So you can understand why at 5.3 the 177 is king compared to every other nation, even the G5 and the G8 from the Japanese. And to see the 288 go up and not the 177 is surprising to me. But then again, you could just fix the 177 by giving it the high altitude bomber spawn instead of this long range heavy bomber spawn, which gives them an extra bit of altitude. So if this goes up and this loses its altitude, you know, it loses the long-range bomber spawn, okay, you know, I can understand that, but right now that's not the case. Instead, this is just going up. And if we're talking about, you know, usability, the 288 will still be good at 5.7. You know, you've still got a lot of cover. One thing that's great about the 5.3, 5.7 BR, look at how many beautiful planes you have to cover you. You know, the K4, the G10, G14, then you got the TARs, which are always fun. Then if you get up to it into, let's say, a 6.7, well, you got a Rados on your team, the Polk is around, and you're not going to hit that magical 7 OBR, which is the one where, you know, a lot of German machines really come online, like the 262 and the Horten. So, yeah, you're not going to face them, and most of the jets are like at 7.0 or above anyway, so you'll be okay. So I think the change is fine. It's probably needed. At the same time, the 177 has to be looked at. The Ju-2S 44 and 59, so both of these are obviously medium bombers by trade. They are actually one of the great grinders of each of the trees if you want to turn off your brain. So the 2S44 and the 2S59 right here, these two, I don't really know why they're above the 2S. The only real difference between them is the fact that they may have slightly different engines, or they may have slightly different turrets on them. Like this has three 12.7 Berezins on it. This also has three 12.7s, and this has a 20mm there, and then two Berezins. So by, you know, defensive turret-wise, they're pretty much all similar to each other. They're all pretty good at the defensive game just because of how the turrets are lined up. If anything comes behind you, you have these two guns here to shoot at them, and also you've got this gun here if they go low. So, and most of the time they're going to be behind you because you're going to be speeding very fast forward. But the main difference between like a 2S with the 2S and the 44, I believe, is the slight speed that you get in this thing, but it's nothing crazy. The 2Ss are great because of their bomb loads. They're really nice to play in ground realistic and also in air realistic because you can knock out quite a few bases with them. You know, this will knock out 2 bases. It's a main bomb load, and also you only have 1 modification for bombs. And it's only for the thousands. So you can run a lot of these bomb loads stock on these machines, making it a hell of a lot easier to be able to use them. And at 6.3, biggest problem you have is that you have the 7.3 MiG-9s, and you don't have a lot of people playing stuff like the Yak-3U, which is going down in BR, and the I-225, because they get shafted by the 7.0 jets. And therefore, your TU2s, they'll go up against stuff like ME-262s a lot, and in air realistic, they're a no-go. Whereas in ground realistic, if you have them spaded, they are really fun planes to fly at 6.3. You have a really nice 6.3 lineup here. You know, the T-44, IS-2, and the SU-85. You could put in the SU-100 if you wanted instead. So, for me, this change is only positive for them. It'll make it easier for them to grind in air realistic, which they are great grinders, since the majority of planes for the Soviets are still not, rank 6, they're still rank 5, 4, and 3, so it'll be, useful for grinding all of them. You could even maybe talisman it if you want to do, like, the, hit 2 bases and be able to maybe get some ground targets on the way back. They're turn your brain off bombers. You don't have to think about it too much what you're doing. It's not like something like a year where your pathing is incredibly important because you are so slow. The TU2, you bomber spawn, and then you dive for a base and make sure to pick the 2 bases which are closest to each other and also furthest away from the enemy airfield, and you can just make bank because these repair costs are incredibly low compared to what you'll be hitting. So yeah, take out 2 bases with the bomb load, the 2 500s and the 1000, and well, you're good, aren't you? So, it's nice to see that they're going down. Seems like a lot of Soviet planes are going down to the 6.0 or the 5.7 region, and I can't blame them. A lot of them have been getting massacred by 7.0 jets for a long time, especially when we talk about the R2Y2s and stuff like the ME-262. So, this will be a massive positive change for these vehicles. Will it affect them in ground forces? Not really, because of the fact that you don't really have a 6.0 lineup in ground forces. They have, one 6.0 vehicle, the ISU-122S, and you ain't building a lineup around that. And if you are, you're a bit of a masochist. The next one is the Arado 234C. It's going up to 7.3, so it joins its brothers, the R2Y2s, at 7.3. Now, the C3 is a fun aircraft to fly. I really enjoy flying it. You can see it right here. It's the last one of the bomber line. You can bring a very nice bomb load, 3 500s, and you also have access to 2 20mm MG151s, which are better, in my opinion, than the MK108s when it comes to killing other planes, and also they're not as good as the 103s, because if this thing had 103s and was centrally mounted, that would be absolutely beautiful. But it does have the MG151s, which are great. It also gets the air spawn. It's got a lot of speed behind it on these engines, and whatever happens with this plane, you are going to get a bomb load off, because you get that bomber spawn, and also because of the options, you can take it into ground realistic, and at 7.0 you used to have a good lineup for the Germans, but everything got moved to 6.7, so you don't have much of a positive lineup for 7.0 anymore. You can still take it into higher BRs like 7.7 if you really want to, so it's still good, but in ground realistic, the Arado 234B2 is the way to go because of its bomb load, and also the Sturmvogel if you have it. But at least in air realistic, its repair cost is 9,404, so you can bomb a base and then go after jets which are either just taking off or just airborne. You can normally nick a kill or use this as a bomber hunter, which at 7.0 is kind of useful if the enemy team has B-17s or B-29s, maybe somebody who takes out the Lincoln for a laugh. So you have more than one option in the 234C3, which is probably why it's going up. Is it equivalent to an R2Y2, which is getting the same treatment, going up to 7.3? Maybe not. I think it's slightly worse than the R2Y2 just because of its general playstyle and its general loss of a lot of energy in the turn. So for me, seeing it go up is kind of surprising in a way, but it does put more of a gap between propeller aircraft and jets. So overall for me, it's a positive. It's just I don't think it's on the same level as stuff like the R2Y2s. The next one is the R2Y2 V3. So we talked about how the R2Y2 V1 and 2 were going up by 0.3, and the V3 was going up to 7.7 from 7.3. That seems to have been reverted, so therefore all of the R2Y2s are going to be the same BR at 7.3. I can understand this. They're all very similar in playstyle and also in performance. It does mean that there is a no-brainer decision on which one to use. You know, you always use the V3 over the others. Like, it's just as simple as that, because it's the best out of them. Has a little bit extra speed. They've all basically got everything else, which is pretty much the same. So if you're wondering, you know, which one do I take, before, it was probably the V2, just because it's better than the V1, because of where its engines are mounted. You know, centrally mounted, means that it can roll a lot better. But the V3 is just better than the V2 because of that little burst of energy that it has. And don't let the stat cards lie to you. This one's spaded, and this one I don't think I've even touched. So yeah. Make sure to spade these, by the way, before they go up. I mean, you might as well, right? I've had an absolute blast in the V2. It is, I can understand why they're going up. Like, I'm 38 and 13 in it, and the worrying thing is the win rate, though. Win rate is really bad in it, even though, you know, I'm pretty much pulling a 3-to-1 KD in it. So, yeah, hopefully that improves at some point, but we'll see. I can now understand why they're all the same BR. I think that's pretty much completely fine, and it means that it's not going to get into that 8-7 bracket, which would maul it. You know, there's so many planes, as you can see, moving down to 8-7 now. They're forcing 8-7 to be a BR. God, anything that's going to be 7-7 or 8-0, just good luck, you know, really good luck. You're not going to have a good time. The last one is the MiG-9 Early, and I just wanted to note that it's changing an arcade to 7.3 to 7.0. That wasn't there before, so if you're an arcade player, maybe that makes a difference for you. The other stuff, so the ground vehicles. T-3457 1943, this is the premium one. It's going down from 4.7 to 4.3. So this brings it in line with the tech tree one, which is slightly different from it, which is why the BRs have always been justified that they're different BRs. You can see the 57 here and the 1943. They have slightly different turrets, so you can, actually I'll just put them in lineups just to show you. So T-3457, let's just stick it here. They have slightly different turrets. The 1943 has a slightly better turret than the T-3457, and also the 1943 gets access to APCR. So you can see this is more like a 1942 turret, and this is more like a 1941. So it has that extra little bit of turret armor on it, but it's also heavier. And you can see the major difference between them is that this gets access to the BR shells, and then this, the 1943, gets access to this, the BR271P shell, which obviously depends more. So now, this is just a better vehicle than the T-3457, which is sat here. The only thing is it's slightly heavier, but that slight heaviness won't really make a difference, or it shouldn't make a difference. So if you're wondering, you know, which one do you take into the battlefield, it should always be this one, just because you have that added APCR round. You can see that it's also slightly higher, so therefore its silhouette is slightly higher, and that's basically because of the turret, but I don't think that would make too much difference when it comes to in the game. So for me, seeing them at the same BR, I mean, if we're going to have the Whirlwinds at the same BR, if we're going to have a lot of very similar vehicles at the same BR, such as the Ursats, M10, and also the Panthers, then having the T-3457-43 at the same BR as the 57 brings it in line with that logic. So if we're going to be consistent, it makes sense. Do I think this is a better vehicle than the one in the tech tree? Yes. So therefore, I would rather have them switched, but you know, at least for now, it stays in line with the changes that they've made elsewhere. And since they've, you know, changed some other stuff, the Furry Tiger, or the Tiger as it's known, but it's the Furry Tiger, the April Fool's Tiger, that was given out, well, not given out, you had to grind this for April Fool's last year. This big boy, the furry tiger that you see here, has the wonderful tiger camo, and then also it has the standard camo as well, so you can run it as a standard, just tiger premium. So since the Tiger H is going down to 5.3, it is not a surprise to me that this is also going down to 5.3. It's pretty much the same vehicle, just with a different camouflage. But also, the heavy tank number 6, the conglomeration of the Tiger H and the Tiger E, they've decided it's going to stay at 5.7. So the turrets of this is keeping it at 5.7, which is kind of interesting. So they've, I mean, to be honest, I don't really have a duck in the fight, or whatever you call it, a goose in the fight, somebody in the fight. I don't really have a hand in the fight. I think it doesn't really make a difference if this is 5.3 or 5.7, just because of the fact that you still don't really have a lineup to run it with, even with the 76. You know, if this is at 5.7, you're running the 76 with it, and if this is at 5.3, you're running the 76 with it. Like, the only difference is maybe you get into 6.7s, but with the new quantitative matchmaking, it wouldn't be as bad as it was before. So, you know, it's going to be a positive change for something like that. So for me, seeing it stay at the same BR, it just means that they see it more as a Tiger E than the Tiger H1, whereas this is just a straight Tiger H1. So I think it's this, once again, keeping with what we talked about before with the T-3457, it makes sense to keep it at the same BR as its compatriot in the tech tree. The next one's the KV-1B Premium, and it's not the KV-1B you're thinking about, it's the 756R one. It's the one with the 75mm, and this used to be a monster in ground RB, to the point where I kind of refused to buy it, but nowadays it's not so much of a monster. So seeing it go down to 4.7 I think is fine. The reason why it's at 5.0 is because of that 75mm KWK-40L48, which is a very good gun, but the more you up BR a vehicle, the worse its armor gets. And what used to be great about this 756 is that it had the firepower and also the armor which got you past, whereas a normal KV-1, the biggest issue it had is that it didn't have the gun to back up the armor. With the penetration changes, at least as this 5 does, the other KVs kind of struggle with it, but this one, the KV-1B756, it never had that issue. But now people have figured it out. You're not also seeing that many of them. It does have some of the other issues, such as the gun depression, and also the fact that at 5.0 you're going to get up to it into 5.7 quite a lot, and even at 5.3 the 76mm Shermans just take you apart. You know, there's nothing you can really do when it comes to your protection analysis to keep yourself alive. Like, if we have a look at this, which is the M5, and we make sure to use the right shell, which is this one, you can see basically this bit, which is where you should always shoot a KV anyway. You know, just the flat part. You can see that just you can one-shot it without any issue as long as you hit a flat bit. Even the turrets, you know, you hit this area here, it destroys the whole turret and nearly kills the driver. So as long as you shoot it in its weak spots, which is, you know, 50% of the front of the turret, and you don't screw up your shot, and even if you do screw up your shot and hit an area like this, it's still going to pen, then you're going to be completely fine against it. So therefore, you know, it's just one of those things where it's kind of lost its charm over the time, because of the fact that its gun is still good and its armor is still okay, but because it got up BR'd at some point, or because the vehicles got added to the game, people figured it out. Kind of like with the Tiger. So seeing it go down to 4.7, we'll see how it does. I am always worried about KVs running around like crazy things because of the speed that they have in the armor, but I'm much more worried about the Soviet ones in this one. I think this one's fine. Even though the main gun that deals with the KVs is mounted to this KV. You know, it's just kind of one of those funny things. That also made it really strong back in the day. The next one is the AMX-13 Hot. Lord Jesus, somebody has answered the prayers. So, the AMX-13 Hot is a 9.0. What is the biggest issue with 9.0 vehicles? Well, first of all, 10.0 exists, so they get updated quite a lot. And also, if you think this thing is equivalent to an MBT or a KPZ or a XM1 or even the premiums that sit themselves at 8.7, like, boy, you're living in a world which I just can't agree with. Yes, the hot missiles are good. You know, the hot 80 gems are great. You know, you have 800 millimeters of pen. But also, they're mounted in a way where you can't hit anything that's anywhere close to you, and your gun's completely useless. It might as well just not exist. And because of the nerf to scouting, which I think what they've done, so a lot of people have asked me my opinion on this, like, what have they done to scouting? Because it seems to have changed. And I think the theory is, and I haven't asked anyone about this, but I think it's linked to your keen vision. You see how you have these identification parts? So you've got absolute identification, movement line identification, and line of sight identification. I think these are what matters when it comes to your scouting. And since keen vision is a collective crew skill, what that means is if I buff it for the driver, then it buffs overall. If I buff it for the tank commander, it buffs overall. I think it's linked to this. So if I'm not moving, my line of sight identification, so my scouting should be about 1235. Whereas if I upgrade it to expert, right here, then it goes up to 1235. Why is that the same? That shouldn't be the same. Let's close it and open it again. See if it's changed. No, still 1235. Well, that's a bit of an issue, but at least the other stuff's gone up. Maybe that's the max then it can go to, which would be a real big issue if that's the case. But anyway, the main thing is, I think it's now linked to keen vision, where before it wasn't, or at least it wasn't in complete part, meaning that, at distances, such as on Maginot and other things, you're going to miss scouts. And it's really annoying for a scout vehicle to miss scouts, especially when you can see the target, it's not moving, you're not moving, you're looking at it through your binos, and you hit the button, and it's like, no, you missed it. And it's just a distance thing, and it's really infuriating, especially at higher tiers where you get bigger maps. So the AMX-13 Hot is going to be affected a lot by this, just like a lot of the IFVs are. And for me, I would rather take all the IFVs over this thing because of the usefulness of their gun, and also because a lot of them have equal or equivalent ATGMs. The only thing you really get out of this is, I suppose, a lower silhouette when it comes down to it. One thing I have done there over the last day or so is I got a pretty cool sight for this thing. Like, I'm waiting for this to go down to 8.7 so I can use this. Look at this sight. So you can see that at about 300 meters is when the hot missile actually comes down. So anything which is, 300 meters or closer, you ain't going to be able to get the missile on. And yes, the missile's great, but you only get 6 of them. And also your main gun is just straight useless. So it's a vehicle that has never really felt its BR, where a lot of the AMX-13s do feel their BR. This one is not one of them. The other one which is going up, the normal AMX-13, I feel like that's also not really feeling its BR, so that's another one which is a little bit weird. But all the other ones seem completely fine to me, they fit well. But it's nice to see this one going down. It basically just takes it out of 10.0 games. It's going to be a lot of fun facing all of the 8.7 premiums in this. I think it's a good change. I'm positive for it. It means that you can run it with the Super, the Menace, and everything else, which will be fun as well. The last one, but not least, the Kami. The Kami, the little Japanese tank that could, is getting moved down to 1.0. And if you don't know what it is, it's the little tubby. This was designed mainly for, obviously, amphibious, either assault or defense. This, of course, Panchito, the fighting cock, as I have it here, has a 37mm, which doesn't pen a lot, has not a great reload when we look at rank 1. It's got good gun depression, though, but it's a chunky boy without a lot of armor. So, for me, going down to 1.0 makes complete sense because it struggles in so many areas. Like, imagine if you have this and you see a Panzer 2C, you might as well just hold J, or if you see an M2A4
before, hold J. If you see anything, pretty much hold J. So seeing this thing go down in BR is really not a surprise, especially after the penetration changes. At some point, I do have to finally modify it. It's one of those vehicles that I tried when Japan first came out, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to use these ones. These ones are a lot more fun, and that's why when I see people ask for stuff like the car Chi, or anything similar to that, I'm like, yeah, sure, let's give it a go, but just remember, the car Mi is just not a good vehicle, you know, it doesn't have a lot going for it, and also with the artillery change they did a while back, oh my, you know, because of the wide berth of this vehicle, it's just absolute hell for it. Like, there isn't a lot going for this vehicle because the main reason why it was added, or the main reason it was designed and created, doesn't exist, you know, in War Thunder. It isn't one of the vehicles which, you know, you can use for like either defensive or offensive assault missions when it comes to being amphibious. Because first of all, you don't get the amphibious package which it needs, which, you know, fits on the front and the back. And also, there is no map which really fits that, apart from the Kuban one, and it takes way too long to do it compared to the rest. I mean, actually, no, there is another one. The Berlin map you can get in the water and go around as well. That works pretty well in the BMP, but it won't work in this because, well, it's not amphibious. So, seeing a drop in BR, not a surprise. I think it's good. Comparing this to like a Chiha just shows how ridiculous it is. So, seeing it drop to 1-0 is a positive move for it, and I can't wait to spade that out. So overall, there isn't many that I disagree with here. Most of them are just bringing in line vehicles with their either tech tree ones or their premium ones to make it more sense. The 264, the issue is the spawn. It is not the BR. The BR won't fix it. The 288, you know, once again, the HE177 has to be looked at, and everything else I think is completely fine. You know, I'm definitely going to keep track on how the KV-1B does, though, just to see if it starts taking over games again, like it was before. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Reinman, Leonard Rudnick, Martinez, Matati, Moxie, Nick Graham, Alobrilo, Super Cacti, Elove Goats, and Seductive Trashcan for supporting the channel.